Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti. I am MrPhotographer.com. If you find that you don't get consistent results in your post-processing from image to image to image, it may be because you're not doing your post-processing in a set sequence, a set number of steps that you do in order every single time for every image. You're more or less following your heart. You're looking at an image and may think, wow, this image needs more color. So you jump right to the saturation slider and add some saturation. Whereas with a different image, you may look at it and say, wow, the shadows are really dark. And you'll jump right to shadows and open those up. The problem with processing an image that way is often you'll leave steps out because you're jumping all around. You're not really doing things in any order, and you'll leave something out that should have been done to the image. Also, some things are done better in certain parts of the post-processing, meaning like noise reduction is better earlier in your post-processing than later. So it's best to come up with a set of steps that you do in order every single time. It will help you be more consistent in your post-processing, and ultimately your processing will be better. Your images will look better. Now I'm going to share with you my 6-step post-processing technique that I use on just about any image. I'm sure there's an exception here or there, but I would estimate probably 98% of my images I follow these steps when I post-process. Now I'm going to show you in Luminar 4. I do this really with any application, so it's not just exclusive to Luminar 4. I'm just doing this video in Luminar 4 because I haven't done a video on Luminar 4 in a while, and it's a really great app. So I wanted to do a video using Luminar 4. Now we're going to start out with step 1. Step 1 is profiles and white balance. I do that right away. Often, if you change a profile in your mid-processing, it's going to really change the color saturation and contrast of an image. So it's best to do it really early, and it's best to set your white balance really early. So white balance profiles, what I'll do is I'll go in Luminar 4 to the light tab, and I'll pick the profile first. Because as I mentioned, you really get a drastic change in contrast and saturation of color. So I'm just going to stay with this image. I'm going to stay with Luminar default. Once I pick the profile, I'll adjust the white balance because often the white balance changes a little bit with the profile as well. So then I'll adjust the white balance. This image, the default as shot white balance is fine. But that's still step number 1. White balance and profile just so happens on this image. I'm not doing anything. Step number 2 is tone. Now, when I talk about tone, I'm really just talking about 4 sliders: highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. And the way I approach it is I look at the tone of the image and see what needs to be done. This specific image, the shadows are really dark. So I'll go right to the shadow slider and open up the shadows. Then I'll just go from there. Bring highlights down a little bit. I'll go to advanced settings on Luminar 4 and I'll get a white point by holding in the Alt or Option key. Alt if you have PC, Option if you have Mac, and move that to the right. You can see I've maxed it out at 100 and I'm not getting any clipping at all. Now what you could do if that happens to you with either whites or blacks is go down to the tone curve and see, as far as whites are concerned, this far right slider on the bottom, just move this over to the left. This is kind of like a levels control. Those of you familiar with Photoshop know that levels look similar to this. If I move this to the left, you can see the image, especially in the highlights, got brighter. Now if I go back up to this whites slider, hold that Alt or Option key in and click in, you can see I'm starting to clip some of the highlights. So I'll just back that off until those highlights aren't clipped anymore. So that's a way to get a better white point, especially when you're maxing out, in this case, the whites. Same thing could be said for blacks. If I hold that Alt and Option key in and click on the blacks and I go to left and nothing is clipping, if I go all the way to 100, then I would go to this tone curve on the far left and move it to the right. But I don't have to here. You can see I'm clipping quite a bit. So I'm just going to clip some of the green channel a little bit down there. And that looks pretty good. So that's it. That's step number 2, tone adjustments. And it really is those 4 sliders: highlight, shadows, whites, and blacks. Sometimes you have to tweak it a little bit with the tone curve levels control. This is the bottom part of the tone curve. That's that. Now, number 3, noise reduction. I alluded to earlier. Noise reduction is best to do early in your processing, and I like to do it after I do my tone. And this is includes if I'm going to send it to an external application. Denoise is my most favorite plugin of every plugin in the world. And if I had an image that had a considerable amount of noise, I would just send it to Denoise at this point. This image was shot at ISO 64, and I really don't see any noise at all. But that's what I would do first. So I would go on this image, maybe I'll just go to the Denoise filter that is in here and just move up some of the luminosity denoise and color denoise. Now that's not to be confused with the plugin Denoise that's made by Topaz Labs. That is my most favorite plugin in the world, but they call it Denoise here as well. So that's number 3, noise reduction. Number 4, I will crop and do any local adjustments now with step 4. So if I need to crop the image, I will crop it now. The reason why I save cropping, I usually like to crop really early, but I like to save it after I do noise reduction, because if you send an image to any external app to remove noise, including Denoise, but really any app, it'll be more effective if it has all the pixels there. If you're cropping away some of the pixels, it doesn't seem to work as well. So I like to do cropping after I do noise reduction and local adjustments as well. So if I hit some spots, if I wanted to put a graduated filter in here or anything like that, I would do right now. Now this image, I don't want to crop it at all. I think it's fine the way it is. So that's step number 4. I didn't have to do anything. Crop, local adjustments. Step number 5 is color. So now I'll come in. This includes saturation, vibrance, remove any color cast. Advanced settings is what I usually just jump right down to, and I will come in and start to do some adjustments here, like increase the red saturation, make that barn come out a little bit. Orange, let's see if we make oranges brighter. Nothing's really a little bit out here in the distance. Not much going there. Go to yellow. Bring luminance of yellow up, saturation of yellow up. Go to green. Make the greens a little bit brighter, a little more saturated, maybe a little bit darker. We'll go greens. Yeah, that looks better. So just like that, that's what I do is I come in here. Usually with the HSL, I don't move saturation and vibrance usually at all. So I'll just come in here and do this here. So that's number 5, color. And I'm really pretty much done. Number 6 is sharpening. So with an image like this, I would just go to the details enhancer. In some images in Luminar 4, I may go to AI structure first, but this is all part of sharpening as far as I'm concerned. So I go to the details enhancer. I usually start out with large details, move that to the right, go to medium, move that to the right. I usually try not to do it too much because it's really easy to over sharpen an image, and then I'll go to sharpening. And just like that. And I'm pretty much done with the image. So those are my steps. Step number 1 is profile, white balance. Step number 2 is tone adjustments. Step number 3 is noise reduction. Step number 4 is cropping and local adjustments. Step number 5, color adjustments. And step number 6, sharpening. And pretty much I'm done. Now, I may make it a 7th step, I suppose, if I put a vignette, because I always do that last. If you want to call that a step. I don't see anyone ever putting a vignette on early in their post-processing, though. That's usually something they just do right before they export the image. So you could say that that is step 7. But I'm going to stick with my 6-step method. That's what I call it. So again, I'll have those steps listed in the description below, and come up with your own set steps. You don't have to follow mine, but I do recommend doing noise reduction early in your post-processing. And if you do use an external application for noise reduction, do your cropping afterwards. You'll find that the noise reduction will come out better if you send an uncropped image to that external app. No matter what it is, it will work better. So do noise reduction early, cropping after it, and then come up with your own method around that. And mention in the comments below if you have a sequential step processing technique that is different than mine. I'm interested to hear it because I always want to learn. Thank you, everyone who watches my videos. I really do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.